Imagine waking up to the news that the system holding your most valuable asset, your home, your retirement, your entire future, has been irrevocably shattered. No warning. No consultation. Just a fatal deadline ticking down. That deadline is May 1, 2026, and it marks the moment a foundational piece of the UK property market, Section 21, the so-called no-fault eviction, is wiped from the law books forever. Their headlines tell you this is a win for tenants, a victory for fairness. But what they don't tell you is the brutal, shocking truth of what's happening behind the scenes. They won't show you the raw fear, the financial panic, or the silent, desperate exodus of thousands of property owners who are being driven out, their life's work branded as a societal crime. This isn't just a legal change, it's a seismic shift that is turning landlords into compliance officers, tenants into power players, and the entire rental market into a volatile, high-stakes battlefield. It's the story of the great rental betrayal, and the fallout is already destroying lives. If this truth has shocked you, you need to stick around. We expose the secrets behind every major news story and financial trend to make sure you're always prepared. Smash that subscribe button now and turn on notifications, because the information in the next few sections is the only thing standing between you and a future financial disaster. They call it their no-fault eviction, and for years, that term has been weaponized against property owners, painting them as villains who can simply snap their fingers and throw out a tenant on a whim. That is a dangerous, devastating lie. The reality is that even under the current law, the soon-to-be banned Section 21, getting a property back for legitimate reasons is already a grueling, financially ruinous process. We're talking about a nominal 2-month notice period that is only the beginning of a bureaucratic and legal hellscape. A person on the ground, living and breathing this system every single day, will tell you the 2-month notice is little more than a piece of paper. If the tenant decides, "I'm not going to play ball," the landlord is immediately dragged into a court system that is utterly, fatally broken. The court process is not fast, it's a slow, grinding mechanism of despair. Even now, with Section 21 still in play, the average time to legally regain possession of your property, complete with a court order and the use of bailiffs, stretches on for 8 to 12 months. Think about that, nearly a year of missed rent, legal fees piling up, and complete loss of control over your own asset. It's a financial hemorrhage. The fact is, in the last 2 years alone, property owners have been serving these notices like they are going out of fashion, not out of spite, but because they are done, they've had enough of the broken system and the financial risk. They are desperate to get their life's investment back so they can sell up and escape. This law, the one about to be banned, was already failing, forcing people into a near-year-long battle for possession. The true tragedy is that the new legislation, designed to fix this, is an overcorrection so radical it's about to create a problem 10 times worse, pushing the courts to a complete standstill and making a painful, year-long process stretch even further into the abyss. The raw, emotional weight of losing a year's income, or being financially paralyzed for 12 months, simply to follow the rules, is the untold story of the current system. It's an open secret in the property world, one the new law promises to change, but is almost certain to amplify in ways that will shock the entire nation. And this is just the beginning of the chaos. The greatest, most shocking ripple effect of this legislative time bomb is the silent exodus, the mass departure of thousands of landlords who are simply deciding to cut their losses, sell up, and walk away. They are selling like they are going out of fashion, because the financial risk has become unbearable, and they feel they've been utterly betrayed by the government and the public narrative. This is not some fringe movement, the numbers are truly disturbing. We saw a stunning 452,000 properties listed on the market in a single quarter this year, and of those, a massive 70,000 were confirmed to be ex-rentals. 70,000 properties removed from the rental pool in just 3 months. This is the raw, emotional evidence of property owners saying, "I quit." They view their property not as an investment, but as an uncontrollable liability, a ticking regulatory bomb that can lead to £40,000 fines and endless court battles. The feeling of despair and lack of control is palpable. For years, many of these owners, particularly those with just 1 or 2 properties, saw it as a retirement plan, a way to provide for their family. Now, they are serving the final Section 21 notices while they still can, knowing that once the deadline hits in May 2026, their exit route will be almost permanently sealed. The chilling realization is that in this new environment, the power has dramatically shifted. It is no longer a professional business arrangement, it's a game of Russian roulette. The owner is the one at risk of massive fines, the one who has to beg the courts, and the one who has to comply with an increasingly complex set of rules. This feeling of being backed into a corner, of having the fruit of their labor systematically devalued and put at risk, is driving the exodus. They are taking their properties back, forcing the existing tenants out, just so they can sell an empty shell and escape the nightmare before the new laws make it impossible. The shocking truth is that this mass exit is only going to drive rents higher and reduce available housing, creating a humanitarian crisis for the very people the law was intended to protect. But the new law is about to introduce a level of complexity that makes the current system look like child's play. If the exodus was the reaction, the new chains are the ultimate consequence. What does the Renters' Rights Act actually look like when it's implemented? It completely rips up the fundamental contract of renting as we know it. The old system used fixed-term tenancies, 6, 12, or 24 months, which gave both the tenant and the landlord a degree of certainty. Those are gone. Wiped clean. They are replaced by the 1-month periodic assured tenancy. This means the tenancy rolls over every month, indefinitely, with no set end date. For a landlord, this immediately introduces an unprecedented level of insecurity. They can never be sure when, or if, they will get their property back, even if they need it for a legitimate, critical reason. It's an emotional trap that shackles the owner to their asset without allowing them any control. The process of getting the property back, whether due to rent arrears, antisocial behavior, or the need to sell, is now forced entirely through the courts and a series of grounds for eviction, which have been described by experts as dangerously weak. Rent arrears now require 3 months of non-payment before you can even begin the court process. When a landlord needs to sell, they now have to wait until the tenant has lived there for 1 full year, and then they have to serve a mandatory 4-month notice. Do the math. That means a tenant could be in the property for at least 16 months before the landlord can even get a hearing date, and even then, they have to prove to a judge on written evidence that they are genuinely selling. The loss of a straightforward, 2-month process is now replaced by a maze of proof, documentation, and a judicial lottery that could take years. It's the shift of power from a professional relationship to one where the property owner is now completely subservient to a state-controlled process, a loss of freedom that feels like an emotional punch to the gut for anyone who relies on their property for income or their future. But the real danger isn't just the complexity, it's the unprecedented financial risks that will shock every single owner. Forget evictions for a moment, because the most terrifying, gut-wrenching aspect of the new law is the £40,000 trap. The government has armed local councils, many of which are completely skint, with a financial weapon so powerful it can instantly bankrupt a landlord who slips up, the civil penalty notice, which can reach a staggering £40,000 in fines. This isn't a couple of £100, this is a life-altering financial penalty for a simple mistake. Under the new rules, property owners must register on a national landlord database, a portal that will act as the ultimate compliance officer. Fail to register, or even forget to update your details, and you open yourself up to a council that will be gunning for those fines as an easy revenue stream. We've seen this play out with high-profile politicians who, despite being part of the government implementing these laws, have forgotten to license their own properties. Under the new regime, their tenant could, in theory, claim back up to 24 months of rent because the landlord didn't comply. This is known as a rent repayment order, and it exposes the massive, shocking risk of non-compliance. The system is creating a layer of regulation so deep and unforgiving that experts are now warning that being a landlord is no longer a hobby, it's a full-time job as a compliance officer. You must be perfectly aware of every rule, the 1-month rent in advance limit, which will devastate the student market, the single annual rent increase, the ban on discriminating against tenants with children or on benefits. If you fail to tick every box, the tenant has the power to demand up to 2 years' worth of rent back. The emotional burden of this is immense. It's the anxiety of knowing that any small, genuine mistake, a missed form, a late registration, a misunderstanding of a clause, can result in the state essentially confiscating your income for 2 years. The clear, brutal message is that if you don't have the time to become a full-fledged expert, you need to hire an accredited agent. The days of casual self-management are not just over, they've been replaced by a system where ignorance is not just a risk, but a financial death sentence. But the worst, most unbelievable rule of all is the one that traps you if you simply try to sell your home. Imagine you've made the painful decision to sell your property. You follow the new law, you ensure the tenant has lived there for the mandatory 1 year, you serve the 4-month notice, you go to court, you spend months waiting, and finally, the tenant leaves. You put the house on the market, but then the unthinkable happens. A family crisis hits, the buyer's chain collapses, or the sale falls through for completely legitimate, unforeseen reasons. You need your asset, but you can't sell it right now, so you think, okay, I'll just re-rent it until I can stabilize things. That is when the most shocking, deeply relatable, and truly unbelievable rule of the new law slams into you. You are banned from renting the property out again for an entire year. This is the moment when the state's control becomes total, and the sense of powerlessness is absolutely raw. What is this? Are we living in some kind of centrally planned state where the government dictates the use of your private property? The law is designed to prevent fraudulent evictions, where a landlord pretends to sell just to get rid of a tenant, but it punishes every honest property owner caught in an administrative trap. This rule creates an agonizing dilemma, especially for the typical small-time landlord. If you need the asset back for personal or financial survival, and the sale fails, you are left with an empty property for 12 months. This is a dead asset, generating no income, while your mortgage and costs continue to pile up. The only choice you have is to leave it empty and bleed money, or risk massive fines if you defy the 1-year ban. This is the definition of having your hands tied behind your back while being forced to watch your financial security crumble. It's an emotional shockwave for people who relied on that asset to navigate a crisis. Instead of flexibility, the law demands an impossible level of prediction and punishes legitimate hardship. Experts are predicting that this will inevitably lead to property owners, already wary of the process, doing the only sensible thing, selling the moment the tenant leaves, no matter what, to avoid being trapped. This will only accelerate the exodus, and as a result, the financial chaos for tenants is about to get much, much worse. The true irony of the great rental betrayal is that the law intended to empower tenants is actively, and shockingly, making their lives worse. The landlord exodus is directly causing the unintended crisis, rents skyrocketing to unprecedented, unsustainable levels. The principles of basic economics are playing out in the most brutal way imaginable. When thousands of rental properties are withdrawn from the market, supply plummets. Demand, however, is only increasing. The result is a ferocious, high-stakes competition where a staggering 11 tenants are vying for just one available property. This is a pressure cooker situation that forces tenants to accept egregious rent prices, or even engage in desperate bidding wars, simply to have a roof over their heads. This completely nullifies any protection the new law promises. We have seen this shocking scenario unfold before, in places like Scotland and Wales, where governments experimented with rent caps and radical tenant protections. The result was not stability, it was chaos. Landlords fled in masses, supply collapsed, and rents surged even higher. This isn't speculation, it's a proven financial reality. The biggest, most emotional loss in this entire saga is for the tenant. When a landlord decides to sell, which thousands are doing right now, they want an empty property. They don't want a sitting tenant who could drag the legal process out for 16 months. So, the tenant is forced out anyway, only to re-enter a market where the prices are astronomically higher due to the very laws meant to help them. The new reality is that landlords, trying to survive the regulatory nightmare, will price in the massive risk. They will demand higher rents to offset the potential for a year of no income, a £40,000 fine, or the cost of endless legal battles. This is the ultimate betrayal of the tenant, where a well-intentioned but fundamentally flawed law is pushing stable housing out of reach for the most vulnerable. The conversation has to shift from slaying the wicked landlord to recognizing the catastrophic, self-inflicted damage this law is causing to the national housing supply. But this isn't the final word. there are more dark forces waiting in the wings. What we have just explored is not the end of the story, it is merely the opening chapter of a financial and social upheaval. This is the biggest change to the private rental sector in over 30 years, and the government has already laid out a roadmap for more shocking, invasive control. We are talking about future deadlines that will bring in a universal landlord database by 2026, where every single property owner must be registered or face the crushing financial penalties. We are looking at 2028, when the new structure for landlord redress is implemented, giving tenants even more power to directly challenge and seek compensation from their property owner. The raw takeaway is this: the days of casual, self-managed property investment are over. This is not a hobby, it's an unforgiving, professional compliance business. If you are a landlord with 1 or 2 properties and you don't have the time to educate yourself, to attend the shows, to join the associations, to obsessively learn the legal detail, then you are walking into a £40,000 trap. Your only viable option, the path to a shred of sanity and protection, is to use a competent, accredited letting agent who carries the indemnity insurance, the client money protection, and the deep, specialized knowledge to protect you when the inevitable mistakes happen. The greatest danger is not knowing the rules, or thinking your existing agent is enough. You must quiz them, you must know their terms, because ultimately, your name is still on the door. The countdown has begun. The shockwaves of May 2026 will hit the system hard, destabilizing the market and shattering the security of both tenants and owners. The question now is not if the chaos will arrive, but whether you have done enough to shield yourself from the fallout. What do you think is the biggest, most shocking mistake a landlord can make under these new rules? Let me know in the comments below.